Hey, I'm Kay. Welcome to Kay's Chit-Chat, where your quiet thoughts become stories and your stories might help someone else feel less alone. The restaurant felt different tonight. Not because of the candles or the tiny lights wrapped around the columns, not even because of the rose petals on the table that Sophia didn't know the name of. It was different because of the way Daniel was looking at her, the way he watched her from across the table, through that little flickering flame between them. It was just different. Sophia couldn't quite name it. Deeper than usual? Heavier? Or so warm it made her want to pull back like she might get burned. "You done with your fish?" Daniel asked. His voice sounded normal. That same low voice she'd heard 1,000 times over the past 3 years. "If you don't want it, I'll finish it." Sophia shook her head and pushed her plate toward him. "Go ahead. I'm full." She meant it, but not because of the food. She was full from this feeling growing in her chest. Something sweet and thick, like she couldn't swallow it down and couldn't spit it out. Daniel took the plate and smiled, that familiar smile, kind of crooked to the left, his eyes squinting into little curves. He ate the rest of her fish like it was the most natural thing in the world, and for them, it really was. 3 years. 3 years together, 2 years living in that small apartment on the edge of town, where the highway noise could drown out any fight if they ever fought. But they didn't fight. They'd never really fought. Daniel was the calmest person Sophia had ever known, and she always just kept things inside until they disappeared on their own. Maybe that's why tonight, when Daniel put down his fork, wiped his mouth with his napkin, and stood up, Sophia already knew what was coming. Not because she'd seen the box in his jacket pocket when he left the house. Not because he held her hand a little tighter walking into the restaurant, but because of the way he breathed. Daniel took a deep breath, a long one, like he was pulling courage from the bottom of his lungs. Sophia sat still, hands on her thighs, feeling sweat start to form on her fingertips. "Sophia." He went down on one knee. The whole restaurant went quiet, or maybe it didn't, but Sophia's ears could only hear her own heart. It was beating so hard she felt it in her throat, in her temples, in that deep place in her stomach that was clenching up for a reason she didn't want to admit. The box opened. The little lights bounced off the diamond, but Sophia wasn't looking at the diamond. She was looking at Daniel's hands. His hands were shaking. Daniel never shook. He was the one who caught her when she fell down the stairs, his hands solid like steel. He was the one who drove 3 hours in the middle of the night to pick her up when her car broke down on the highway. His hands steady on the wheel. He was the one who worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, to pay for his mom's medicine and his siblings' school. But he never complained, never let her see him weak. And now his hands were shaking. "I want to ask you something." His voice didn't shake. His voice was still warm, still low, still that same sound Sophia had fallen asleep to for 3 years. But his hands, those hands holding the box, they trembled just enough for her to see. Just enough for her to know he was scared. She'd never seen Daniel scared. "Will you marry me?" Simple question, 3 words. Sophia smiled. She didn't mean to smile. She didn't even know she was smiling. But her mouth just pulled up on its own, making this curve, while the corners of her eyes started burning. Tears came. Not because she was happy. Sophia knew that right away when the first drop rolled down her cheek. It was hot. Really hot. And it tasted salty when it touched the corner of her mouth that was still smiling without her permission. It wasn't happy tears. It was tears from something breaking inside her. Something she couldn't name. "Sophia?" Daniel looked at her, his eyes wide, his smile starting to fade. "You're crying." "I'm just emotional." Her voice sounded far away, like it was coming from somewhere else. I didn't think you would..." "Say it. Say yes. Just one word. One word. Why can't you?" Sophia looked at the diamond. It sparkled in the candlelight. Beautiful. Beautiful in that way. Daniel always picked things. Not too fancy, not too expensive, but enough to show he'd saved up. Planned, tried his hardest. And that was exactly the problem. Trying his hardest. Sophia had watched Daniel try his hardest for 3 years. She watched him wake up at 5 in the morning to make food for his mom before going to the hospital. She watched him come home at 9 at night, dark circles under his eyes, but still sit down with his 13-year-old sibling to help with math homework. She watched him take extra night shifts at the restaurant, even though he had to wake up early the next day. She watched him get thinner, watched his hair thin out, watched his shoulders hunch like they were carrying something invisible, but incredibly heavy. And she watched herself stand beside him, helpless. No, not helpless. She could help. She did help. She cooked. She picked up the kids. She stayed at the hospital with his mom on days he couldn't take off work. She did everything a girlfriend could do, but she couldn't do anything more. And if she married him, she'd have to do more. That thought came out of nowhere. It stabbed into Sophia's head like a cold knife, making her whole body go stiff. She was still sitting in the restaurant chair, facing the man she loved on one knee, with a ring in his hand. But in her head, a different picture was forming. A picture of 10 years from now, 20 years from now. She was still beside Daniel, still cooking, still driving kids around, still at the hospital. But by then, there might be their own kids. His mom might be bedridden. His siblings might still not be independent. He might still be working 12-hour days, and she would be too. And at the end of the day, they'd sit across from each other in their small apartment, too tired to talk, too exhausted to remember why they fell in love. Sophia shivered. "You cold?" Daniel asked. He was still on one knee, but his body shifted forward like he was about to stand up and get her jacket. No, I'm not cold." Sophia wiped her tears, but they kept coming. She smiled. A crooked, wet smile. Not the smile of someone who just got proposed to. It was the smile of someone trying to hold on to normal, trying to seem okay, trying not to let the other person see the panic rising from her stomach. "I'm just really emotional," she said again. Slower this time, clearer. Like saying it loud enough and strong enough would make it true. Can you give me a minute?" Daniel looked at her for a long moment. The candlelight danced in his eyes, making little spots of light that made his already deep eyes look even deeper. Then he smiled. A gentle smile, nothing forced, like he really believed that she was just emotional. "Okay," he said, standing up and pulling his chair back. His hand still held the box, but he set it on the table, close to Sophia. "Take your time. I'm not going anywhere." Sophia nodded. She grabbed her water glass, took a sip, but the water wouldn't go down. It got stuck somewhere, right where that lump had been sitting in her throat. They sat like that, across from each other, with soft music playing from the speakers. The tables around them kept whispering, kept laughing, kept living their lives. And Sophia sat there feeling the ring box sitting on the table in front of her like a question without an answer. When they got home, Sophia went straight to the bathroom. She didn't take off her dress, didn't take off her shoes, didn't do anything except stand in front of the mirror and look at the woman inside. That woman still had tear tracks on her cheeks. Her makeup smudged below her eyes into two pale black streaks. She looked at Sophia, and Sophia looked at her, like two strangers meeting in a small space. "What's wrong with me?" The question came out of her mouth, but nobody answered. Sophia reached for the faucet, turned on cold water, and splashed her face. The water was so cold it made her skin tighten, but it couldn't cool the burning in her chest. She looked in the mirror again. This time, the water had washed away the smudged makeup, leaving her bare face pale with red-rimmed eyes. She loved Daniel. She knew that. She'd loved him since that day he'd opened his car door for her in the rain. His white shirt soaked, but he still smiled and asked, "Are you okay?" before even asking her name. She loved the way he made her noodles at midnight, loved the way he fell asleep at the desk helping his siblings study, loved the way he said her name, Sophia, drawing out the last sound like a sweet sigh. She loved him, really loved him so much. But why couldn't she say yes? Sophia put her hand on her chest, feeling her heart beating faster than normal. It wasn't a happy heartbeat. It was a scared heartbeat. Fear of something she didn't want to look at directly. She walked out of the bathroom and heard Daniel cleaning up in the kitchen. Same as always. Coming home, he'd go straight to the kitchen, wipe the counter, wash dishes, put everything in order. For him, housework wasn't a chore. It was instinct. Like the way he held her hand crossing the street, like the way he gave her the better piece of meat from his plate, like the way he got down on his knees tonight with shaking hands. Sophia walked closer, stood in the kitchen doorway, and looked at his back. He'd taken off the white shirt from dinner and changed into an old t-shirt with a worn collar. His shoulders were broad, but she could see them tense, muscles under the fabric tightening every time he reached to wipe the counter. Daniel. He turned around, still holding the dish rag, Yeah, you hungry? Want me to make you noodles? Sophia shook her head. She tried to say something, anything, but her mouth just opened and closed. I'm tired, she finally said. I'm going to bed. Okay, Daniel nodded, his voice still soft. Good night. I'll come in when I'm done. Sophia turned away, but before going into the bedroom, she stopped, didn't turn around. Hey. I'm sorry. She didn't say what for, and he didn't ask. In the bedroom, Sophia lay on the bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. Her hand unconsciously went to her ring finger. Empty, but it felt heavy, like a ring was already there. She grabbed her phone, opened a message to her best friend. Her fingers typed, deleted, typed again, deleted. Finally, she sent one line. He proposed, and I didn't answer. Sent. Sophia turned off the screen, put the phone on her chest, where her heart was still beating, not fast, not slow, but in a strange rhythm, like it was waiting for an answer she couldn't find. Outside, she heard Daniel close the kitchen cabinet, turn off the light. He was coming in soon. Sophia closed her eyes. And in the darkness behind her eyelids, she saw the candlelight again, saw the open box again, saw the shaking hands again. And she asked herself, not should I say yes, but a different question, deeper, scarier. If I can't say yes to him, what am I waiting for? Sophia woke up at 3 in the morning. Not because of noise, not because of a bad dream. She just woke up because her body wouldn't stay still anymore. That heat in her chest spread to her arms and legs, making her toss and turn until the sheets twisted into a mess under her back. Next to her, Daniel was still sleeping. He lay on his side facing her, one hand under his pillow, the other hanging off the edge of the bed. His face was relaxed in sleep, without the tension it usually had when he was awake. Sophia watched him for a while, listening to his steady, slow breathing. He breathed through his nose, with a little snore when he inhaled. That sound that used to annoy her at first, but now made her feel safe. She slipped out of bed quietly, feet touching the cold floorboards. The living room was dark, only streetlight coming through the window, making faint light streaks on the floor. Sophia sat on the couch, pulled her knees up, and hugged them. And then the memories came flooding back. The first time Sophia went to Daniel's house, it was a Sunday afternoon. He'd warned her beforehand. My place is kind of small, my mom's sick, and the 2 little ones are wild. Don't feel weird about it. His voice was cheerful, but Sophia noticed his hands gripping the steering wheel a little tighter. The house was in a neighborhood Sophia had never been to. Rows of cramped rental houses, packed together, paint faded, streets so narrow only one car could fit. In front of each house sat an old beat-up car or some potted plants thrown on the steps. Daniel stopped the car and turned off the engine. He looked at the house, a narrow 2-story place. First floor window wide open, TV and kids screaming inside. My mom's lived here since I was 15, Daniel said, still staring straight ahead. That's when my dad left. Mom's back started hurting around then. This place is cheap and close to work. Sophia didn't say anything. She just noticed the smell, that rental neighborhood smell. A mix of fried food, laundry detergent, and something musty from walls that never got fixed. They went inside. The living room was so small, the couch took up almost all of it. On the wall hung an old photo, a younger woman with long hair standing next to 3 kids, all of them smiling. Sophia looked at the man in the picture, but Daniel didn't introduce him. Daniel's mom sat on the couch, leaning against a worn-out pillow. She was thin, really thin. So thin Sophia could see her collarbone sticking out under her thin sweater. Her eyes were sunken, but when she looked at Daniel, they lit up. You're home? Her voice was soft, a little hoarse, but warm. Then she looked at Sophia and smiled. Is this your girlfriend? She's beautiful. Sophia bowed her head to say hello, but before she could speak, 2 kids ran down from upstairs. The older one was maybe 13, the younger one 10, both in school uniforms with messy hair. They launched themselves at Daniel like little missiles, grabbing onto him tight. Daniel, did you bring snacks? You promised last week. Daniel laughed, rubbing both their heads. Yeah, let me get them. He looked at Sophia with an apologetic expression. Hang out with my mom, okay? Sophia sat down next to Daniel's mom. The couch sank down, the springs broken, making her lean toward the woman. She tried to sit up straight, but every little move made the couch creak. Daniel's mom looked at her, still smiling. Daniel having a girlfriend makes me so happy. That boy just works and makes money, doesn't take care of himself. Having you with him puts my mind at ease." Sophia nodded, not knowing what to say. Her hands rested on her lap, feeling her jeans get damp from sweaty palms. "Daniel's a good kid," his mom continued, her voice slow, like every word needed thinking. "He takes care of his siblings, takes care of me. Sometimes I feel bad about it, but that's what kids do, right? He's the oldest. He has to carry the weight." She reached out and patted Sophia's hand gently. Her hand was dry, bony, but her touch was soft. "I just hope he finds someone who understands him," she said, looking straight at Sophia. "Someone he can lean on. Every mom just wants their kid to be happy." Sophia felt the woman's hand holding hers, warmth spreading through thin skin. She wanted to pull away, not because she was uncomfortable, but because she knew this hand-holding wasn't just friendly. It was a question, a request, a handing over. The second time, it was raining. Sophia came alone because Daniel was working overtime. He'd asked her to bring medicine for his mom, and she couldn't say no. When she arrived, the two kids were sitting on the floor doing homework. The older one held a pencil, scratching their head, staring at a math problem like it was a foreign language. The younger one had their face on the notebook, already asleep. Daniel's mom lay on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, even though it wasn't cold. When she saw Sophia, she tried to sit up, but her body wouldn't cooperate. She got halfway, then leaned back against the couch, breathing hard. "You came," she said, voice breaking between breaths. "Daniel asked you to bring medicine, right? Thank you so much." Sophia put the medicine bag on the table and turned to look at the two kids. The older one was still staring at the math problem, eyes red and watery. "What problem?" Sophia asked, sitting down next to them. "Fractions," the kid said, voice choked up. "I don't get it." Sophia took the pencil and gently explained. The kid looked at her, eyes brightening a little, then nodded and scribbled in the notebook. The younger one kept sleeping, body curling up when thunder rumbled outside. By the time Sophia stood up to leave, it was dark. She looked around the room, unwashed dishes, clothes draped over chairs, and that thick smell of herbal medicine in the air. She couldn't help noticing this house needed someone. And Daniel was the only one. The third time, Daniel said something to her. They were walking in the park after a long day of Daniel taking his mom for a checkup. He was quiet for a while, only the sound of their shoes on the path. "I'm saving up," Daniel suddenly said. Sophia looked at him. Sunset hit his face, highlighting the tired lines she'd gotten used to. "Saving for what?" she asked, though she thought she already knew. Daniel turned to her, his eyes bright in a way she rarely saw. Not tired eyes, not worried eyes. It was the look of someone seeing something in the distance, something they truly believed was real. "I'm saving to buy a house for the whole family," he said, his voice more excited than usual. "Not renting anymore, Sophia. Our own house. For my mom, the kids, and me." He took her hand and pulled her closer. 3 bedrooms would be enough. Front yard, backyard, so my mom can grow vegetables. What do you think? Sophia smiled. She was proud. Really proud. He worked his butt off, never complained, and he was slowly building a future for his family. How could she not be proud? But deep in her stomach, something tightened. She was proud, and she was scared. Sophia couldn't explain why. Or maybe she didn't dare to. Because if she admitted it, if she gave that fear a name, it would become real. And the truth was, that house, 3 bedrooms, front yard, backyard, it would never be just Daniel's, his mom's, and the kids'. If she married him, it would be hers too. Sophia sat on the couch in the dark, and the numbers started dancing in her head. She didn't want them to, but they came anyway. Daniel's salary, $40,000 a year. After taxes, about $32,000. His mom's medicine, $12,000 a year. Insurance didn't cover it all. The kids' school costs $6,000. Rent, $12,000. Food, utilities, gas, $8,000. Sophia had sat with him once when he needed help calculating for a bank loan. She looked at the numbers, added them up, and realized Daniel lived on about $2,000 a year for himself. $2,000, $160 a month. With that, he bought clothes, lunch, gas, and sometimes bought her a small flower bouquet from the grocery store. She didn't cry then. She just felt something pressing on her chest, heavier and heavier, like each number was a brick stacked on her ribcage. And now, sitting alone in the living room at 3 a.m, Sophia started calculating for herself. She made $55,000, more than Daniel, but she had student loans to pay, $12,000 a year. She paid half the apartment rent, her and Daniel splitting it. But if they got married, they wouldn't live here anymore. They'd live in that house Daniel was saving for. That house, 3 bedrooms. Sophia closed her eyes and the numbers kept coming. 2 kids, 10 and 13. At least 8 more years until they were independent. Daniel's mom, chronic illness, no income. And if she became bedridden, who would take care of her? A caretaker would cost money. Or Sophia would have to quit her job. Sophia opened her eyes and looked at the ceiling. She realized something. If she married Daniel, she wouldn't just marry him. She'd marry his mom, marry his 2 siblings, marry all the unspoken debts, marry the sleepless nights at the hospital, marry the parent-teacher conferences, marry the medicine bills, marry that feeling of always having to try a little harder, a little more. Until there was nothing left to try with. She loved Daniel. She loved him more than anything she'd ever loved. But was love enough to carry 3 other people? Sophia didn't know. And the scariest part was, she was afraid the answer was no. She sat on the couch, arms wrapped tight around her knees, feeling each vertebra in her back like it might break under invisible weight. Outside the bedroom, Daniel's breathing stayed steady. He was still sleeping. He didn't know she was out here, calculating their life in cold numbers. Sophia bit her lip until she tasted salt. She didn't want to calculate, but she couldn't stop. Because if she didn't calculate, who would? Daniel? He'd already calculated. He'd calculated everything for his family, but he'd never calculated for her. Not because he was selfish, but because he thought she'd be there. He thought love was enough. And Sophia wished it were. She wished she could have said yes last night, taken the ring, and slept peacefully. She wished she didn't have to sit here in the dark while numbers danced and crushed her. But she couldn't. And that was the most painful part. Sophia looked toward the bedroom where Daniel was sleeping, and she knew. Tomorrow, when he woke up, he'd ask again. He'd look at her with those warm eyes, with that belief that she just needed more time. And she'd have to give him an answer. But now, in the darkness of 3 a.m, she still didn't have it. She only had numbers. And those numbers told her something she didn't want to hear. If you marry him, you'll be taking on 3 more people, and you don't know if you're strong enough. The air in the restaurant was so sweet it made Sophia feel sick. Not because of the food. The food was good. The wine was good. The wedding cake was decorated with soft, cream-colored flowers. It was because of the way people looked at her and Daniel, the way they smiled, the way they asked. So when's your turn? The question came from Min, her college best friend, married for 2 years, 8 months pregnant, standing in front of Sophia with her round belly and a smile that wouldn't quit. Sophia smiled. She did it so easily she hated herself for it. Mouth pulling up, eyes squinting, making an expression anyone would think meant she was happy. Not sure yet, she said, her voice light like it was nothing. We'll see. Min laughed loud, slapping Sophia's shoulder. Oh, please. You 2 have been together 3 years. Daniel's such a good guy. What are you waiting for? If I had a boyfriend like that, I'd marry him right away. Sophia felt Min's hand hit her shoulder, friendly, casual, but every time it touched, her shoulder tensed up a little more. And Daniel. Daniel stood beside her, his hand on her hip, his thumb drawing tiny circles on her dress fabric. That familiar touch, gentle. But when Min asked that question, Sophia felt his thumb pause. Just a second. Then it kept moving. She turned to look at him. Daniel was looking at her. His eyes were bright, not restaurant light bright, not reflection from someone's wine glass bright. It was light from inside, the same light she'd seen that night when he went down on one knee with the ring. Hope. He was hoping. Sophia felt it like she felt his warmth through the thin fabric. Daniel's hope wasn't loud. It wasn't urgent questions or hypnotic stares. It was just him standing there, hand on her hip, waiting. Waiting for her to say something, anything. And her, Sophia, she smiled. A fake smile. She knew it was fake. She felt her face muscles tighten unnaturally, her mouth stretching too wide, her eyes opening too big. It was the smile of someone performing, and she hated it. We'll see, she said again, like repeating it would make it more real. Min didn't notice. Min had turned to her husband, pulling him into the conversation, introducing Daniel like he was already the son-in-law of some family. Sophia stood beside them, holding her wine glass, feeling the cold from the glass seep into her palm. The bride and groom gave their speeches. Sophia stood in the crowd, listening to the promises. Forever. Always. For richer or poorer, in sickness and in health. Words repeated at every wedding until they became as familiar as an old song. But today, each word fell into Sophia's ears like a small stone. Poor, sickness, forever. She felt the wine glass in her hand. Her hand was cold, but the glass was warming up from her touch. She looked into the glass, dark red, almost brown in the yellow light. She thought about the numbers in her head, about the bricks on her chest, about the unanswered question. The bride cried. The groom wiped her tears. Everyone clapped. Sophia clapped along. Her hands hitting each other made sound, but she didn't hear it. Her ears only heard her heartbeat in her chest, slightly faster than normal. Not enough for anyone to notice, but enough for her to know. The party ended at 11. Sophia and Daniel left, hand in hand, walking to their car 2 blocks away. The street was empty, just a few cars passing occasionally. The night air was cool, carrying the smell of dry leaves on the sidewalk. Daniel held her hand. Not tight, not loose. Just enough for Sophia to feel each of his fingers, each knuckle, each little callus on his fingertips, from the work he did. She felt the warmth from his palm spreading up her wrist, up her arm, creating that safe feeling she wanted to sink into. But that safe feeling was exactly what scared her. "Did you have fun?" Daniel asked, his voice low, mixing with the wind. "Yeah," Sophia said. This time she didn't have to pretend. Friends' weddings were always fun. Good food, good wine, seeing people she hadn't seen in forever. She really did have fun. But she was also tired. Daniel stopped walking. Sophia stopped too, looking at him. He stood under the streetlight, the yellow light covering his hair, his shoulders, his eyes looking at her. "Sophia," he said her name, drawing out the last sound like a lullaby. Sophia felt his hand squeeze a little tighter, just a bit, like he wanted to hold her back before she went somewhere he couldn't follow. "I know what you're thinking." Sophia's heart stopped. No, not stopped. It pounded so hard she felt each beat in her throat, her temples, even her toes curling in her shoes. He knows? He knows about the numbers? He knows about the calculations? He knows she sat in the dark at 3 a.m, letting bricks pile on her chest. He knows she made a list in her head. His mom, his siblings, the bills, the debts, the years ahead. Daniel lifted her hand and placed it on his chest. Sophia felt his heartbeat under his shirt. It beat slow, steady, solid, just like him. "But we're going to be okay." The words were soft. No drama, no big moment. Just words spoken by the man who'd gone down on one knee with shaking hands, who'd worked 12 hours every day, who'd fallen asleep at the desk helping his siblings study. "We're going to be okay." Sophia looked at Daniel. His eyes were still bright, still with that hopeful light. But beside it, Sophia saw something else. Something deeper, quieter. Not hope, but belief. Belief that love was enough. Belief that 2 people could make it through. Belief that everything would be okay. And Sophia wanted to believe. She wanted to believe so badly her whole body hurt. She wanted to nod, wanted to hug him, wanted to say, "You're right, we'll be okay." But her throat closed up, and her eyes started burning. Not because she was emotional, not because she was touched, but because she knew for sure that if he knew what she was really thinking, he wouldn't say that. Because what she was thinking wasn't, "Will we be okay or not?" It was, "Do I have enough strength to walk that road with you?" And the answer she couldn't say out loud, was pressing on her chest heavier than ever. Sophia smiled, another smile. This one was thinner, weaker, just enough to hide her shaking lips. "Yeah," she said, "but we'll be okay." Daniel smiled and pulled her into a hug. Sophia pressed her face against his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. But she couldn't relax. Her body stayed stiff in his arms, shoulders tense, arms hanging down, not strong enough to hug back. She stood in the arms of the man she loved and felt lonelier than ever. When they got home, Sophia lay in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Daniel slept beside her, breathing steady. He fell asleep fast. Always did. He could sleep anytime, anywhere, like his body had learned to shut off when not needed to save energy. Sophia couldn't. She lay still, counting each tick of the clock on the wall. 1, 2, 3. Her body was so tired it felt like melting, but her brain kept spinning, spinning, spinning. She thought about Daniel's eyes under the streetlight. She thought about, "We're going to be okay." She thought about, "I know what you're thinking." And she realized he didn't know. He really didn't know. He thought she was scared of marriage. He thought she was scared of commitment. He thought she just needed more time. But he didn't know what she was really scared of. She was scared she wasn't good enough to be his woman. She was scared that someday, between the bills and the hospital and the sleepless nights, she'd look at him and not see love anymore. She was scared she'd become someone bitter and tired and blame him for it. She was scared of herself. Sophia got out of bed and went to the living room. She sat on the couch where she'd sat every night and picked up her phone. Her fingers scrolled across the screen, opened the browser. She typed into the search bar, one word at a time, fingers shaking slightly with each tap. How to turn down a proposal when you're still in love. She stared at the words she'd just typed, the screen light hitting her face in the darkness, creating patches of light and shadow. Her finger hovered over the search button. Sophia closed her eyes. When she opened them again, her finger still hadn't touched the screen. She looked at the words, and in her head, the question changed into something else, something scarier. How do you turn down someone you love, when you know turning them down might be the best thing for both of you? Sophia put the phone down, turned off the screen. Darkness covered her again. She sat on the couch, arms around her knees, and felt the invisible bricks keep stacking on her chest, one by one, heavier and heavier, until she couldn't breathe anymore. But she still didn't have an answer. She only had an unsent question, and a man sleeping in the other room, still believing they'd be okay. The phone rang at 6 a.m. Sophia jolted awake, grabbing her phone from the nightstand. The screen lit up with Daniel's name. She answered, her voice still rough from sleep. "Sophia, my mom's in the hospital." Daniel's voice wasn't panicked or rushed. It was calm, steady, like he was talking about something that had been expected for a long time. But Sophia could hear his breathing through the phone, faster than usual, shallower, like his lungs weren't getting enough air. She sat up, feet hitting the floor, feeling the cold wood under her soles. "Which hospital? I'm coming." Sophia got to the hospital around 7. The emergency floor hallway was already packed. She walked quickly past rows of chairs, scanning for Daniel. The smell of antiseptic was so strong she had to hold her breath for a second to get used to it. She spotted him at the end of the hall. Daniel stood outside a room, holding a piece of paper, reading it over and over. He wore that old shirt with the worn collar, jeans faded at the knees. Sophia noticed he wasn't wearing shoes, just the slippers he used at home. "Daniel?" He looked up, eyes a little red. Not from crying, from lack of sleep. Sophia knew that look. She'd seen it on his face many times, especially on days he'd been running between 3 jobs. "You're here," he said, his voice still low. "Mom's stable now. Her blood pressure spiked. The doctor says she needs to stay a few days." Sophia nodded. She wanted to ask if he'd eaten, but looking at his face, she already knew the answer. His cheekbones were more pronounced than last week, dark circles under his eyes, and he stood slightly tilted, like his body was trying to save every bit of energy. "Go in and see her," Daniel said, opening the door. "I'll handle the paperwork." Sophia walked in. The room was small, just 2 beds. Daniel's mom lay by the window, an IV in her arm, a heart monitor beeping steadily. She opened her eyes when Sophia came close, her lips forming a smile. That smile made Sophia's heart ache, because it hadn't changed. Even lying in a hospital bed, even pale, even with age spots on her hands more visible than ever in the morning light, that smile was still gentle, still warm, still the smile of the woman who'd held her hand in that cramped rental house years ago. "Sophia," she said, voice rougher than usual. "You came." Sophia pulled a chair next to the bed. The woman reached out and Sophia took her hand. Her hand was dry, bony, but still warm. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, looking at Sophia. "Daniel worries too much. Calls you over nothing." "It's okay," Sophia said, keeping her voice normal. "I want to be here." Daniel's mom looked at her for a moment. Those deep eyes had seen a lot in life. Her husband leaving, 3 small kids, sickness, sleepless nights. Those eyes looked at Sophia, and Sophia felt like she was being seen right through. "You know," she said slowly, each word carefully chosen, "Daniel loves me so much. He doesn't say much, but I know." Her hand squeezed Sophia's gently. Not hard, but enough for Sophia to feel each finger. "He works so hard," she went on. eyes still on Sophia. Ever since his dad left, since I got sick, he became the Rock. I feel bad for him, but I can't do anything. I just watch him get thinner, watch him get old before his time. Her voice cracked. Sophia felt her eyes burn. She wanted to say something, but her throat felt tight. Then he met you, she said, eyes brightening. I saw him get happier. He smiled more. He had someone to talk to share things with. It made me so happy. She paused, taking a deep breath. The heart monitor kept beeping steadily, but Sophia noticed the numbers on the screen jumped a little higher. Sophia. She said her name, and now her voice wasn't that of a sick woman in a hospital. It was a mother's voice. A woman who'd raised 3 kids alone, who knew what wait felt like and what love felt like. With you here, I can rest easy. She held Sophia's hand tighter. Daniel has someone now. Sophia froze. She sat in the chair, hand still in Daniel's mom's hand, and she felt each word land one by one, like drops of ice water running down her spine. With you here, I can rest easy. Daniel has someone now. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a request. It was a statement, a handing over, a release of the weight she'd carried for years, and now she was placing it on Sophia's shoulders. Sophia wanted to pull her hand away. She wanted to stand up, walk out, breathe air that didn't smell like antiseptic, and numbers dancing on a monitor screen. But she couldn't. She sat still, hand in the woman's hand, mouth still holding a smile. Okay, she said. Her voice came from somewhere far away, not her own throat. I'll be there for him. Daniel's mom smiled, closed her eyes, still holding Sophia's hand. Her breathing slowed, steadied, and Sophia sat there, watching her fall asleep. While in her head, numbers and words spun like a tornado. Daniel came back to the room at 9. He carried a bag, medicine, bills, paperwork. Sophia watched him pull out a small container, open it, set it on the table by the bed. Rice, braised pork, pumpkin soup. Hospital food, but arranged neatly, carefully. He sat in the chair on the other side of the bed, facing Sophia. Light from the window hit his face, and Sophia could see clearly now the things she'd been trying not to see. Daniel was thin. Not the kind of thin from dieting or exercise, the kind of thin that comes from giving all your energy to other things, until your body is just bones. His collarbone stuck out under his shirt. His wrist holding the spoon was smaller than she remembered, and his eyes, still bright but deeper, hollowed out, like something had been drained from inside. He brought the spoon to his mom's mouth, gently, patiently. Every time she swallowed, he waited, never rushing. His hands didn't shake. Sophia looked at those hands, the hands that had shaken holding the ring, and now they were steady, like he'd been born to do this. Want a little more? He asked softly. The doctor said you need to eat to keep your strength up. His mom shook her head, eyes closed. Daniel put the spoon down, picked up a napkin, gently wiped her mouth. His movements were soft, familiar, like he'd done this 1,000 times. And maybe he had. Sophia watched. She couldn't look away. Every move Daniel made, how he fixed the blanket, how he checked the IV, how he tucked his mom's hair behind her ear, all of it was slow, careful, filled with a kind of love Sophia didn't have a name for. But she saw something else too. She saw Daniel's shoulders tense every time he leaned down. She saw him rub his neck when he sat up straight. She saw him check his watch, then his phone, then his watch again, like he was counting every minute. And she saw how thin he was. So thin that when he stood to get water, Sophia looked at his back through his shirt and could see each vertebra like it was trying to push through the fabric. She wanted to say something. Have you eaten? Did you sleep? What can I do for you? But she knew the answers. He hadn't eaten. He hadn't slept. And there was nothing she could do to change that. Because this was Daniel's life. And if she married him, this would be her life too. That afternoon, Daniel's siblings were brought to the hospital. The older one, 13, stood at the door, looking at their mom in bed, lips pressed tight. The younger one, 10, ran straight in, hugging their mom, sobbing. Mom, what's wrong? Come home with me. Daniel's mom reached out, stroked their hair, eyes wet. I'm okay, sweetie, just a little tired. I'll be home in a few days. Daniel stood beside them, hand on the little one's shoulder. He looked at his mom, at his siblings, and on his face, Sophia saw something she'd never seen before. Exhaustion. Not the tiredness from a long day at work. It was the tiredness of someone who'd been running a race with no finish line. And they had to keep running, because if they stopped, the people behind them would fall. The older one still stood at the door, not coming in. They looked at Sophia, eyes asking something, then just bowed their head, walked in, sat across from the bed. They pulled out books, set them on their lap, opened them. But Sophia could see their eyes weren't reading. 13 years old. At that age, other kids could hang out, watch movies, think about carefree things. But here they sat, in a hospital room, books on their lap and mom in bed. Sophia looked at them, then at Daniel, then at his mom. And she wondered, if I marry him, will this be my life? The question didn't come from selfishness. It came from somewhere deep, where she'd been trying to bury things for 3 years. It came from the sleepless nights, the numbers she'd calculated, the bricks she'd stacked on her chest. It came from the truth she was afraid to admit. She didn't know if she was strong enough to live this life. Sophia stood up and told Daniel, I'm going out to get some water. He nodded, eyes still on the doctor's papers. Okay, I'll be here with Mom. She walked into the hallway. Her shoes made small sounds on the hospital floor, but they got lost in the loudspeaker calling doctors, the carts rolling by, the families whispering to each other. Sophia stood at the end of the hall, looking out the window. Outside, the city kept moving. Cars kept driving. People kept working. Life kept going. But inside her, everything had stopped. She thought about the hospital room behind her, the man sitting by his mom's bed, the 13-year-old with books on their lap, the 10-year-old who'd cried until no tears were left. She thought about what Daniel's mom said. With you here, I can rest easy. Daniel has someone now. And she thought about the question hanging in her head. If I marry him, will this be my life? Sophia closed her eyes, leaning her head against the wall. The cold from the wall seeped through her hair, her scalp, down her spine. She opened her eyes and looked at her hands. Empty hands. No ring, no promise, nothing. And she didn't know if she wanted to put anything there. It started with small questions. Are you coming home early? I can make you noodles. No, I'm tired. I already ate out. You left so early this morning. I didn't get to make you coffee. Yeah, I had stuff to do. Want to see a movie tonight? Maybe next week. Short answers. Never more than a sentence. Never any details. Sophia said them smoothly, like she'd memorized them, and each time she finished, her throat felt dry, like she'd swallowed sand. Friday night, Daniel asked something else. They sat on the couch, a space between them that Sophia couldn't remember appearing. Before, she used to lean on his shoulder, her legs across his lap, curled up next to him like a cat looking for warmth. Now she sat half a meter away, hands on her lap, back straight. Daniel looked at her. He looked for a long time. Long enough for Sophia to feel his eyes on her skin, hot, questioning, and she had to keep her face toward the TV, where some movie was playing that she wasn't seeing. Sophia. His voice was low, slow. She knew that voice. It was the voice he used when he wanted to say something serious. Is something going on? You seem different. Sophia felt her chest tighten, a sharp pain in her upper stomach, like someone had pressed a finger into a bruise. She turned to look at him, her mouth automatically pulling into a smile. Nothing's going on, she said, voice light. Just work pressure. Things have been busy. Her smile was perfect. She knew because she'd practiced it in the mirror. Not too wide, not too narrow. Eyes slightly squinted, making little lines at the corners, looking exactly like someone who was tired but still trying to be happy. Daniel looked at her for a moment. His eyes, the eyes that had watched her for 3 years, through the best days and the worst, didn't leave her face. Then he nodded. Okay, he said, voice still low. If you're too tired, rest. Don't push yourself. He reached out, about to put his hand on hers. Sophia felt the warmth from his hand coming closer, and her body reacted automatically. Her shoulder pulled back a little, her fingers curled slightly toward her palm. Just a little, just enough for Daniel to see. His hand stopped in midair, not touching her. Then he pulled back, putting it on his knee. Let me make you some tea, he said, standing up. Okay, thanks. Sophia watched him walk to the kitchen. His back was straight, steps steady. But she saw him pause at the door just for a second, like he needed to catch his breath before going in. She closed her eyes, feeling the ache in her chest spread. In the days that followed, Sophia started avoiding Daniel. She didn't mean to, at least that's what she told herself. But every morning, she woke up earlier than him, left before he could wake up. Every night, she came home later when he was already sleeping or about to sleep. She ate out, not with him. She texted instead of talking. And she stopped going to his house, stopped asking about his mom. stopped asking about his siblings, stopped asking if he'd eaten. The questions she used to ask every day, like they were part of her breathing. Now she held them back, pushed them down, leaving an empty space in her throat. Daniel didn't ask why. He still texted her every day. Short messages. Have you eaten? How was your day? I miss you. Sophia read them, put her phone down, then answered 5 minutes later, and I ate. It was fine. I miss you too. The last 3 words, she was lying. Or not exactly. She did miss him. But it wasn't the same missing as before. Before, missing him made her feel warm, made her want to run home, hug him, hear his voice. Now, missing him hurt. A dull, constant pain, like a piece of glass in her chest she couldn't take out. Saturday, Daniel came to her place. Sophia heard the doorbell, opened it, and there he stood. He was holding a bag. She could see bread, milk, fruit, things she liked. I thought you hadn't had breakfast, he said, voice normal. Brought you some stuff. Sophia stood in the doorway, not inviting him in. She knew what she was doing. She knew she was creating distance. But she couldn't stop. Because if he walked in, if he sat on the couch where they used to sit together, if he looked at her with those eyes, she would break. Thanks, she said, taking the bag. I was just about to head out. Daniel looked at her. He didn't say anything, just looked. And in that look, Sophia saw something. Not anger, not blame, but a deep, quiet hurt. Like a cut that doesn't bleed, but never heals. Okay, he finally said. I'll go then. He turned away. Sophia stood in the doorway, watching him disappear behind the elevator door. Her hand still held the bag, feeling the warmth from the fresh bread. She closed the door, put the bag on the table, and stood there looking at it. He'd walked 15 minutes to the bakery. He'd picked out things she liked. He'd carried the bag, walked back, rang the bell, and stood at her door, waiting for her to open. And she hadn't invited him in. Sophia covered her face, feeling heat on her cheeks. She wasn't crying. She wished she could cry, but the tears wouldn't come. They were stuck somewhere, between her throat and her chest, with everything else she'd been holding in. Daniel didn't give up. That was the worst part. He still texted, still checked in, still did the little things he'd always done, making her coffee every morning, even though she was up before he could make it. Leaving small notes in her lunchbox, even though she wasn't packing lunch anymore. Calling during lunch break, even though she usually didn't pick up. One day, Sophia came home and found a small box on the table. Inside was a silver bracelet, thin, simple, with a tiny heart charm. A note was tucked underneath. I can see you're sad. I don't know why, but I want you to know I'm here. If you want to talk, I'll listen. If you want silence, I'll be here too. I love you. Sophia held the bracelet in her hand. It was light, so light, but it pressed into her palm like a stone. She looked at each word on the note. Daniel's handwriting, not pretty, a little crooked, but clear, careful, like everything he did. She put the bracelet down. She picked it up again. She put it down. She picked it up. Finally, she put it on. It fit, like he'd measured her wrist without her knowing. The cool metal touched her skin and she felt it there. A closed circle, light but impossible to forget. Sophia sat at the table, hands flat on the wood. She looked at the bracelet on her wrist, the light reflecting off the silver, making small, bright spots. She thought about Daniel. He worked 12 hours a day. He ran from place to place, hospital to market, market to home, home to his extra job. He had no time for himself. He didn't buy new clothes. He didn't hang out with friends. He didn't have hobbies except taking care of the people he loved. And yet he still made time to buy her a bracelet, still made time to write a note, still made time to love her, even though she was pushing him away more every day. And that was killing her, because every good thing he did was a knife. Every text was a cut. Every look was a bruise. The nicer he was, the worse she felt. The more he loved, the more she hated herself. Sophia couldn't take it anymore. She dropped her head, forehead hitting the cold table. She closed her eyes, and in the darkness she saw Daniel's face. He stood at her door, holding a bag of bread, hurt in his eyes, but still gentle. And she whispered, so quiet only she could hear, "Please stop being so nice to me." The words broke in her throat, not into sound, but into something wet that spilled from her eyes. Finally, the tears came. They ran down her nose, dripped onto the table, making small round spots under the light. Sophia cried in silence, She cried for Daniel. She cried for herself. She cried because love wasn't enough to make her brave, and her selfishness was turning a good person into a victim. And in that crying, she knew one thing: she couldn't keep going like this. But she also didn't know how to stop. The bracelet on her wrist still sparkled under the light. A closed circle, light and impossible to remove. Or maybe she didn't want to remove it. The door opened, and Sophia almost didn't recognize him. Daniel stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame, the other holding a bottle that was more than half empty. His eyes were bloodshot. Not from crying, at least she thought, but from alcohol. The smell of liquor hit Sophia's nose, strong, making her want to step back. But she didn't step back, because she'd never seen Daniel drunk. 3 years. 3 years of knowing him, 3 years of being with him, and she'd never once seen him drink too much. Daniel was controlled. He knew his limits. He knew he had to wake up early tomorrow, take his mom to the doctor, help his siblings study. He didn't have time to be drunk. But now, he stood in front of her, eyes unfocused, shirt messy, tie slung over his shoulder like something forgotten long ago. "Sophia," he said, his voice rough, different from the low, warm voice she knew. It cracked like a glass that had been cracked for a while and was finally breaking. "Daniel, you're drunk." Sophia reached out to steady him. Her hand touched his arm, and she felt his weight press into her. He was heavier than she thought, but also lighter. Light in the way someone gets when they've been carrying too much and finally, in the drunkenness, let a little go. Daniel walked in, stumbling. Sophia guided him to the couch, sat him down. He dropped onto it, sinking into the cushions, head back, eyes on the ceiling. Sophia sat next to him. She didn't know what to do. She'd never seen Daniel like this. He was always steady, the one she leaned on. Now he sat on the couch, still holding the empty bottle, and he looked smaller than she'd ever seen him. "Let me get you some water." She started to stand, but Daniel grabbed her hand. His hand was hot, hotter than usual. The alcohol was heating him up, and that heat spread through her skin, making her feel each finger. The fingers that had shaken holding the ring, the fingers that had been steady feeding his mom, the fingers now holding her like she was the only thing keeping him on the ground. "Stay," he said, "just for a minute." Sophia sat back down. They sat in silence. Sophia heard the clock on the wall, the distant sound of cars, and Daniel's breathing, heavy, uneven, like his chest was working twice as hard. Then Daniel cried. Not loud crying, not sobbing, just tears. They came from his closed eyes, rolled down his cheeks, down his chin onto his shirt. Quiet tears, like even when he cried, he didn't want to bother anyone. Sophia froze. She watched the tears on the face of the man she loved, and she felt her chest squeeze tight. She wanted to wipe his tears. She wanted to hug him. She wanted to do something, anything, to make him stop crying like this. But she couldn't move. Her hands were on her lap, frozen, like someone had nailed her to the seat. "I know you're scared." Daniel's voice broke in the middle, like a string pulled too tight, finally snapping. His eyes were still closed, tears still coming, and he spoke each word, like each one had to fight its way out of his throat. "I'm scared too." Sophia felt his hand grip hers tighter. His hand shook, not a small shake like the night he proposed. It shook like someone trying to hold something that was about to break. "I'm scared of losing you, more than being poor, more than anything." He opened his eyes and turned to her. His eyes were red, wet, but still had that light Sophia had seen the first time she met him. The light of someone who loved truly. "But I can't leave my mom. I can't leave my siblings. You understand, right?" The question hung between them. Sophia understood. She understood every word, every pause, every silence between the sentences. She understood that Daniel was finally saying what he'd never said directly in 3 years. He was admitting he knew his situation was a burden, knew she was scared, knew he might lose her because of it. But he couldn't be anyone else. And in that moment, Sophia looked into Daniel's eyes, looked at the tears running down his face, looked at his shaking hands holding hers, and she saw the truth. Not the truth about Daniel, the truth about herself. Sophia had thought she was scared of being poor. She'd thought she was scared of the burden. She'd thought she was scared of the numbers, the bricks, the years ahead. She'd thought if she were brave enough, strong enough, she could get through it. but now sitting in front of Daniel, watching him cry, she realized she wasn't scared of being poor. She was scared she didn't love him enough. The truth hit her chest like a cold knife. It didn't hurt at first. It was just a cold that spread from her chest to her hands and feet, numbing her. And then the pain came, sharp, choking, like someone had reached into her chest and crushed her heart. She didn't love him enough. She'd blamed the situation, blamed his mom, his siblings, the numbers, the weight. She'd convinced herself the problem was outside and things she couldn't control. But the truth was the problem was inside her. If she loved him enough, she'd be ready. If she loved him enough, the numbers wouldn't matter. If she loved him enough, she wouldn't be sitting here, calculating, measuring, scared. She didn't love him enough. Sophia looked at Daniel. He was still looking at her, eyes wet, waiting. He'd just admitted his biggest fear, losing her. And he'd laid it in front of her, bare, unprotected. And she couldn't tell him the truth. She couldn't say, "Daniel, I don't love you enough." Because she knew it would kill him. It would kill whatever light was left in the eyes that had already seen too much loss. So she did the only thing she could do. She hugged him. Sophia reached out, wrapped her arms around Daniel's shoulders, pulled him to her. She felt his body stiffen for a second, then collapse, like the last wall finally giving way. He pressed his face into her shoulder, and she felt his hot breath on her neck. His tears soaking through her shirt, his shoulders shaking. Sophia held him. She stroked his hair, her fingers running through the soft hair she'd touched 100 times before. But this time, every touch was different. It wasn't tenderness between lovers anymore. It was the tenderness of someone about to leave. And in that embrace, and Daniel's warmth pressed against her, Sophia felt a decision forming in her chest. It didn't come like thunder, it came quietly, like a door closing. Not slamming, not loud, just a closing. Soft, final. She couldn't marry him. She loved him, but not enough. And if she married him with a love that wasn't enough, she would ruin his life. She would become the angry, tired wife, the woman he would look at one day and wonder, where did the woman I love go? She didn't want to do that to him. She didn't want to be the one who broke him. Sophia held Daniel tighter. She wanted to remember this, the way his body leaned on her, the way his breathing slowed, the way his shoulders stopped shaking. She wanted to remember it, because she knew there wouldn't be many more times. "Daniel," she said, her voice so soft it barely made sound. "I'm here." She was lying, one last time. Daniel didn't hear the lie in her voice. He just heard the voice of the woman he loved, saying she was here, and he believed. He nodded in her arms, his body slowly relaxing. The alcohol, the exhaustion, the relief of finally admitting his fear, all of it mixed together, pulling him into sleep. Sophia sat on the couch, holding Daniel asleep in her arms. She looked at his sleeping face, the tired lines smoothed away, giving him back a youthfulness she rarely saw. He looked like that 15-year-old boy from back then, when his dad had just left, when he had to become the man of the house before his time. She looked at him, and in her heart, the decision was made. She would tell him, not today, not tomorrow, but soon. She would tell him she couldn't marry him. She would tell him she loved him, but that love wasn't big enough to carry what he needed to carry. She would tell him he deserved a woman who could stand beside him, not run from him. She would tell him she wasn't good enough. Sophia closed her eyes, pressing her cheek to Daniel's hair. The smell of alcohol was still there, but underneath she smelled him. The familiar smell of soap, of coffee, of a man who'd worked hard all day. She breathed it in, held it in her lungs like she could keep it forever. And in the darkness behind her eyes, she saw it all again. The night he proposed, the numbers in the dark, his eyes under the streetlight, his mom's words in the hospital, the bracelet on her wrist, and now his tears. She saw it all, and she knew. She couldn't keep running. She had to face the truth. The truth that she loved him, but not enough. The truth that she was selfish. The truth that she was going to hurt him. Sophia held Daniel tighter, feeling his heartbeat through his shirt. It beat slow, steady, solid. The heart of a man who gave everything without calculating. And her with her heart beating fast from fear, from guilt, from a painful truth just uncovered. She closed her eyes, whispered into his hair, "I'm sorry." 2 soft words, but they carried a decision she knew would change their lives forever. Sophia was sitting at her table, cup of coffee long gone cold in front of her, when her phone rang. She looked at the screen. "Mom." She swiped and put it to her ear. "Hello, Mom. Sophia, are you okay?" Her mother's voice came through the line, familiar as always, warm but distant. "Yeah, I'm fine. Daniel's doing okay?" Sophia felt her face tighten. That name, coming from her mother's mouth, carried a different weight. It wasn't just a question, it was a reminder. An anchor. "Yeah, he's okay." Silence. Sophia heard her mother breathing on the other end, and she knew what was coming next. She knew because she'd heard it so many times lately, each time a small pressure like water dripping steadily into a glass that was already full. "What are you waiting for? You're 27 now?" Her mother's voice wasn't harsh, not exactly. It was the voice of a worried mother, one who'd watched her friends become grandmothers, who thought her daughter's happiness lay in a wedding and a family. But to Sophia, each word was a needle. "Daniel's such a good guy," her mother continued, voice steady. "He loves you, he works hard, he's responsible. What more are you waiting for?" Sophia closed her eyes. She felt the cold coffee cup under her palm, cold enough that no warmth was left. She wanted to say, "Mom, I'm not waiting for anything, I'm scared." But she couldn't, because if she said it, it would become true, and once it was true, she couldn't take it back. "I know," she said. "I'll figure it out." The call ended. Sophia put her phone down on the table and looked at it like an enemy that had just retreated. And in her head, the water kept dripping into the glass. Monday at the office was louder than usual. Sophia sat at her desk, eyes on her computer screen, but she wasn't seeing anything except numbers blurring together. From the next desk, a colleague's voice rang out, high and excited. "My husband bought a house in that new neighborhood, good schools, safe area. I'm picking paint colors for the living room." Sophia turned to look. Her colleague, same age, married a year ago, was showing photos of her new house on her phone. White walls, big windows, shiny wood floors. "How big?" someone asked. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, front yard and backyard. He said we'll have room when we have kids. Everyone oohed and awed. Sophia smiled, her automatic smile, like a reflex. She nodded, said, "So nice," voice even. But inside, something twisted. 3 bedrooms, front yard, backyard, kids. Those things, for her and Daniel, were a distant dream. She looked down at her hands. The silver bracelet Daniel gave her was still on her wrist. She wore it every day, never taking it off, like a reminder of the man who'd put his whole heart into a small gift. But the bracelet wasn't a house, and love wasn't a mortgage payment. Sophia turned back to her screen, and the numbers started dancing again. Her income, her student loans, rent, food, gas, add, subtract, multiply, divide. And when she added Daniel, added his mom, added his siblings, added medicine, added school costs, added all the unnamed things, the final number was always a question mark. That night, Sophia sat alone in her living room. Daniel wasn't coming. She'd told him she needed time alone, and he, as always, didn't push. He just said, "Okay, I understand," and left her be. She sat on the couch, looking out the window. Lights from the buildings across the way sparkled. Each window a different life. Married couples eating dinner together, families watching TV, kids running around the living room. And here she was, with a blank piece of paper in front of her. She picked up a pen. Her hand didn't shake, but it felt heavy, like she was holding something that wasn't a pen. Sophia drew a line down the middle of the paper. On the left, she wrote, "Marry him." On the right, she wrote, "Don't marry him." She looked at those 2 words. So simple for a decision that could change everything. She started writing. Left column, "Marry him." "Yeah, be with Daniel, his arms every night, his voice, his smile. He's good, he loves me truly. Won't regret letting him go." Sophia looked at what she'd written. They were beautiful words, warm, everything she wanted. She wanted to be with him, wanted his arms around her, wanted his voice, wanted his smile. She wanted it so badly her eyes started burning. She moved to the right column. Don't have to worry about his mom's medicine. Don't have to worry about school costs for his siblings. Don't have to worry about a house. Don't have to worry about 3 other people's futures. Freedom. Buy what I want, quit my job if I want, have kids when I'm ready, live my own life. Sophia stopped. She read the words again, and a chill ran down her spine. The "Don't marry him" column was longer. She put the pen down, looking at the paper in front of her. 2 columns, 2 choices, 2 lives. One side love, one side freedom. One side him, one side her. But why wasn't it that simple? Why couldn't she have both? Why did loving someone mean giving up everything she'd worked for? Sophia closed her eyes, and in the darkness, she saw 5 years ahead. She saw herself still in this apartment, but not alone. Daniel was there, but his mom was there too, and his siblings. The apartment was more crowded, louder. Rent was higher because they needed more space. She saw herself working, coming home, cooking, cleaning, driving kids to school, taking his mom to the doctor. At the end of the day, she sat down, too tired to talk. Daniel sat next to her, also tired. They looked at each other, wanted to say something, but didn't have the energy. She saw herself wanting to buy a new dress, but looking at the bank account and changing her mind, wanting to eat out, but thinking about his mom's medicine and changing her mind, wanting to quit her job to find something better, but not daring to because if she was unemployed, the whole family would fall apart. She saw herself wanting kids, but then she looked at the numbers, looked at his mom in the hospital bed, looked at his siblings still so young, and she knew. Not now. Not yet. Maybe never. Sophia opened her eyes. She looked at the paper in front of her, the words blurring, not because the paper was wet, but because her eyes were full. She picked up the paper. Her hands shook, but not from cold. They shook from seeing the truth, and that truth was crushing her. The "Don't Marry Him" column was longer. Not because she was selfish. She told herself that. Not because she didn't love him. She did love him. She loved him so much it hurt. But love wasn't enough. Love didn't pay for medicine. Love didn't pay school fees. Love didn't buy a house. Love didn't feed kids. Love didn't make his mom healthy. Love didn't make his siblings grow up faster. And love didn't make Sophia less scared. She looked at the paper, at the 2 columns, at the rushed handwriting, and she realized something. She couldn't have both. She had to choose. And whichever side she chose, she'd lose something. If she chose marry him, she lost her freedom, lost her own dreams, lost the life she'd imagined for herself. If she chose don't marry him, she lost Daniel, lost the only man who ever made her believe love was real. Sophia held the paper up to her face. The words were blurry, but she could still read them. She read each word, and the tears started coming. Not the quiet tears from before. These were hot tears coming hard, carrying everything she'd held in for months. They ran down her cheeks, down her chin, dropped onto the paper, making the ink bleed into gray smears on the white. She cried for the paper. She cried for the words. She cried for the truth that she had to write these things down, put them on a scale, measure love with things that couldn't be measured. She cried for Daniel, for how he would never know she sat here, with a blank paper, trying to find a way to keep him without losing herself. She cried for herself, for the woman in the mirror she hadn't recognized in so long. The woman who was so practical it was cruel, the woman who calculated even when she loved, the woman who was so scared she had to write it down to know what she wanted. The paper was soaked. The words on the right had bled into gray smears, unreadable. But Sophia didn't need to read them. She remembered every word. She'd written them, and each word was a cut. She let the paper drop. It fell onto the table, lying there, wet and crumpled. Sophia put her face down on her arms, her shoulders shaking, and in her empty living room, she cried alone. She cried for the decision she knew she had to make. And in that crying, there was no Daniel, no mom, no friends, no one. Just her, the paper, and the numbers that had crushed her heart into small, sharp pieces that couldn't be put back together. Sophia got there 20 minutes early. She sat at their usual table, the back corner by the window, where she and Daniel always sat when they went out. From here, she could see the street, cars passing by, people hurrying off to wherever they needed to go. Her hands rested on the table, feeling the cold wood under her palms. She'd been here 100 times, but today everything felt different. The chair felt harder than usual. The light from the window seemed brighter, and the coffee smell, her favorite smell, today it made her feel sick. Sophia looked down at her hands. They were shaking. Not a little shake like before, but a real shake so bad she had to put both hands on her lap and press them together to hide it. She was ready. In her head, she'd practiced the words over and over, hundreds of times. In the bathroom, in front of the mirror, In the kitchen, while cooking, in bed, in the middle of the night. She'd memorized it like a speech. Every word, every pause, every silence. Daniel, I need to tell you something. I love you, but I can't marry you. I'm sorry. Simple. Short. No long explanations, no blame, no excuses, just the truth. But now, sitting at their usual table, waiting for him to arrive, Sophia realized she couldn't say it. Not because she wasn't brave enough, but because every time she imagined the scene, her sitting across from Daniel, looking into his eyes, saying those words, her body reacted in a way she couldn't control. Her chest tightened, her throat went dry, and her eyes started burning. She couldn't say it, because if she said it, it would become true, and she didn't know if she could live with that truth. The cafe door opened. Sophia looked up and Daniel walked in. He was wearing his light blue shirt, her favorite, because it made his eyes look brighter. His hair was trimmed, but Sophia noticed a few gray hairs at his temples she'd never seen before. He was thinner than the last time she saw him. His face was gaunt, and when he looked around for her, his eyes had something in them. Sophia didn't know what to call it. Tired, sad, or acceptance? Daniel spotted her. He smiled. That familiar smile. A little crooked to the left, eyes squinting into two curves. But it wasn't the smile of the man who'd gotten down on one knee to propose. It was the smile of someone who already knew what was coming and was trying to make it hurt less. He walked to the table and sat across from her. The chair scraped softly on the floor. He put his hands on the table, near hers, but didn't touch. You're early, he said. His voice was normal, low, warm, like always. Yeah, Sophia said. I left a little early. Silence. Sophia heard the coffee machine from the counter, the clink of cups being set on saucers, the chatter from other tables. Everything was normal. Like this was just another date. Like she wasn't about to do the worst thing she'd ever done. Want me to get coffee? Daniel asked, nodding toward the counter. Okay. He stood up and walked to the counter. Sophia watched his back, broad shoulders but thinner than she remembered. He stood waiting, hands in his pockets, head slightly down. A normal man, waiting for coffee. But nothing was normal. Daniel came back holding 2 cups. He set one in front of Sophia, coffee with milk, less sugar, just how she liked it, and kept the other for himself, black, no sugar. He remembered, of course he remembered. He remembered everything. Daniel sat down, pulling his cup toward him. He didn't drink, he just looked at it, his finger tracing the rim in unconscious circles. Sophia looked at his hands, the hands that had shaken holding the ring, the hands that had been steady feeding his mom, the hands that had held hers the night he got drunk and said he was scared of losing her. Those hands were holding a coffee cup now, and Sophia could see they weren't shaking. They were steady, so steady it scared her. We need to talk, and she said. The words came out dry, like her throat didn't have enough moisture to make smooth sounds. Sophia felt each word leave her mouth, heavy, clumsy, like small stones pulled from the ground. Daniel looked up at her. His eyes, the eyes that had watched her for 3 years, through the best days and the worst, now looked at her with something different. Not hope, not waiting, it was gentleness. A gentleness so painful it hurt. Yeah, he said, I know. Sophia opened her mouth. She was ready. She'd practiced. She'd memorized. To Daniel, I need to tell you something. Let's see. But she couldn't. She looked into his eyes, and all the words she'd prepared in her head just disappeared. They flew away like papers in the wind, leaving her mind blank, empty, and she sat there, mouth open, no sound coming out. Sophia felt her chest being crushed. Her heart was beating so fast she could hear it in her ears, a pounding, panicked rhythm. Sweat started forming on her forehead, her nose, her palms resting on her lap. She couldn't say it. She couldn't tell the man who'd loved her for 3 years, who'd gotten on his knees for her, who'd cried in her arms, that she couldn't marry him. She couldn't look into those eyes and say those words. She started, but her voice broke. Daniel looked at her. He saw her eyes getting red, her lips trembling, her shoulders shrinking like she was trying to make herself small enough to disappear. And then he spoke. You were going to say goodbye, weren't you? Sophia froze. Not a small freeze, her whole body went stiff, like someone had dumped a bucket of ice water over her. She felt every hair on her head stand up, every pore on her arms tighten. Her eyes went wide, looking at Daniel, and in that moment she couldn't breathe. He knew. He already knew. All those days she'd been avoiding him, all the lies about work, all the silences between them. He knew. He'd known for a long time. Maybe from the night he proposed, when she didn't answer. Maybe from the nights she sat in the dark, calculating numbers. Maybe from when she stopped going to his house, stopped asking about his mom, stopped being the woman who'd held his hand and said, "I'm here." He knew. And he'd stayed silent. He'd still texted, still checked in, still bought her gifts, still loved her. He'd still hoped. And now he was looking at her, his eyes without hope now, only gentleness and a deep sadness. Daniel smiled, a sad smile, the smile of someone who'd seen the ending coming from far away. And now that it was here, he didn't have the strength to be surprised or fight back. It was just acceptance, a letting go. "I knew," he said, his voice light like he was talking about the weather. "I was just waiting for you to say it." Sophia looked at him. The tears started coming. Not the quiet tears like before. These were hot tears, coming hard, carrying everything she'd held in for months. She wanted to say something. She wanted to say sorry. She wanted to say she loved him. She wanted to say she was sorry she didn't love him enough. She wanted to say he deserved someone better than her. She wanted to say she'd miss him, miss his voice, miss his hands, miss the mornings he made her coffee, miss the nights he fell asleep at the desk, helping his siblings study. But she couldn't say anything. She just sat there, tears running down her face, looking at the man she loved. The man she wasn't brave enough to love all the way, who was looking back at her with eyes that already knew everything. Daniel didn't cry. He sat still holding his coffee cup, still tracing the rim with his finger. He looked at Sophia, at her tears, at her shaking shoulders, and he didn't say anything. He just sat there like someone who'd been preparing for this moment for a long time. And now that it was here, he had nothing left to say. The cafe was still noisy. People around them were still talking, still laughing, still living their lives. Cars still passed by outside. Sunlight still came through the window, making long, bright streaks on the table. And Sophia sat there, across from Daniel, tears still falling, but she stopped trying to speak. She just sat still. Daniel sat still too. Two people sat across from each other in their usual cafe, where they'd sat 100 times, where they'd laughed, held hands, loved each other. And now they sat there, neither one speaking. No goodbye, no apology, no explanation. Just silence. A long, heavy silence, filled with everything that hadn't been said. And in that silence, Sophia knew. This was the last time she'd sit across from him like this. This was the last time she'd look into his eyes and see herself being loved. This was the last time she'd call him Daniel, without any distance between them. She wanted to hold his hand. She wanted to touch the hands that had shaken holding the ring. She wanted to say she was sorry, that she loved him, that she wished she could be different. But she didn't do anything. She just sat still, looking at Daniel, letting the tears fall. And Daniel sat across from her, still holding his cold coffee, looking at her with a gentleness she couldn't explain. Didn't do anything either. They sat like that in their usual cafe, while life went on around them, and neither of them said another word. Because some things, even without being said, are already an ending. The air in the cafe felt thick. Sophia sat across from Daniel, her tears dry on her cheeks, but the salt still on her lips. She looked at him. The man who'd loved her for 3 years, who'd gotten on his knees for her, who'd cried in her arms, who'd said he was more scared of losing her than of being poor. And she knew it was time. Sophia took a deep breath. Her chest expanded, her lungs filled, pulling in so much air she felt every rib stretch. She held that breath for a few seconds, feeling it in her throat, her chest, that deep place in her stomach that was clenching. Then she let it out. A long, slow breath, like she was pushing out everything she'd been holding in. "You know," she began, her voice steady. That surprised her. She thought she'd shake, break, not make it through a sentence. But her voice was steady, tired but steady. "I've been thinking a lot." Daniel sat still. His hands were still on the table, near hers, but not touching. He didn't interrupt. He didn't nod. He just sat there, eyes on her, waiting. "I love you." Sophia said those 3 words, and they were still true. They still burned in her chest, still were the first and last truth about how she felt for him. But today, they weren't the answer. They were just the truth. But I'm not brave enough. The words came out, and Sophia felt something in her chest. Not break, but settle, like a door that had been opened too long finally closing. Quiet, no drama. I'm scared, she continued, and this time her voice started to shake. I'm scared of being poor. I'm scared of sleepless nights in hospitals. I'm scared of looking at my bank account and not having enough. I'm scared of not being able to buy a house, not being able to have kids. I'm scared that one day I'll look at you and not see love anymore. Just exhaustion. Tears came again. This time Sophia didn't wipe them. She let them fall. I tried not to be scared. I tried to be brave enough. I tried to love you enough to get through everything, but I can't. She stopped. Her throat was clogged, like someone had stuffed sand in it. She swallowed, feeling each sharp grain slide down. I'm not good enough for you, Daniel. The last sentence broke. Not a whisper, not a cry. It broke like something held too long, and now that it was released, it didn't have a shape anymore. Sophia sat there, tears streaming, shoulders shaking, but her eyes didn't leave Daniel. She wanted to see him one last time, wanted to remember this face, these eyes, this man. Daniel was silent for a long time. Sophia heard the cafe clock, the coffee machine, the traffic outside, but all of it faded. Only the silence between them was clear, was real, was undeniable. And then Daniel reached out. He took her hand. His hand, still warm, still gentle, still the hand that had shaken holding the ring, that had been steady feeding his mom, that had held hers the night he was drunk, now held her hand lightly, not squeezing, just resting on top of hers, like he wanted to say, I'm here, I'm still here. Sophia looked at his hand on hers. Her tears fell, landing on the back of his hand, making small round drops that sparkled under the light. I understand. 2 words, light, simple. But that they carried everything Daniel didn't say. He understood her fear. He understood her calculations. He understood why she couldn't say yes. He understood that love sometimes isn't enough. He understood, and he didn't blame her. Sophia looked up at him. Daniel's eyes weren't as bright as the day he proposed. That light had dimmed, but there was still gentleness there. A gentleness that broke her heart. I love you too, he said, his voice low, steady, but with a small crack at the end, a crack only Sophia could hear. But I can't blame you. He squeezed her hand just a little, just enough for Sophia to feel the warmth from his palm. It's not your fault you're scared. It's not your fault you calculated. That's who you are, and that's who I love. Sophia cried. Silent tears, but they flowed like a stream, carrying everything she'd held inside for months. She cried because he still loved her, because he didn't blame her, because he understood. And because he understood, it hurt even more. Daniel let go of her hand. He did it slowly, one finger at a time, like each one had to learn how to leave. First the pinky, then the ring finger, then the middle, the index. Finally, only his thumb rested on her hand, like a period at the end of a sentence. Then it was gone. Sophia felt his warmth disappear from her hand, leaving a cold, empty space. Daniel stood up. He stood in front of the table, looking at her one last time. Light from the window was behind him, making a soft glow around his body. She looked at him, and in that moment, he was beautiful. Beautiful in the way someone who'd given everything and now quietly received nothing in return. Goodbye, Sophia. He turned away. Sophia watched him walk out of the cafe. Slow steps, back straight. The door opened. Sunlight flooded in, making her squint. And then he disappeared behind the door, merging with the people on the street. She sat there alone, with 2 cold cups of coffee. Sophia left the cafe as dusk began to fall. She walked along the sidewalk, not knowing where she was going, just walking. Her legs moved on their own, like a machine, while her head was empty. No numbers, no calculations, no fear, just empty. The evening breeze was cool, carrying the smell of dry leaves and street dust. Sophia took a deep breath, and this time, she didn't feel her chest being crushed. It felt light, strangely light. She stopped at a street corner, leaned against a lamppost, and looked up at the sky changing from blue to purple. Clouds drifted, small white clouds floating slowly. She felt her body. Her legs were sore, her back ached. Her eyes were swollen from crying. But her chest wasn't heavy anymore. The bricks had been removed, one by one, leaving a wide open space, empty but not painful. She felt relieved. The relief came so suddenly, Sophia had to wonder if something was wrong with her. She'd just broken up with the man she loved. She'd just ended 3 years together. She'd just said the worst words a person can say, "I'm not brave enough." And yet she felt relief. Not because she didn't hurt, she hurt. She hurt so much that when she thought about Daniel, her chest felt crushed. But that pain wasn't buried under tons of fear and guilt anymore. It was out in the open, clear, visible, and there was something about that clarity that made her feel relieved. She'd stopped running. Sophia stood under the lamppost, breathing, and for the first time in months, she felt air actually reach the bottom of her lungs. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and looked at the screen. Daniel. Her heart skipped a beat. She put the phone to her ear, her fingers slightly shaking. "Hello?" Daniel's voice came through, low, warm, but there was something in it. Not sad, not angry, peace. A strange peace, like he'd just put down a weight too. Sophia. He said her name, drawing out the last sound like a lullaby. "One last time. Thank you for the last 3 years." Sophia stood still. Tears came again, but this time, they weren't from pain. They came because she realized he was still Daniel, the kind man till the end. The man who'd loved her for 3 years, who'd cried in her arms, who'd said he was more scared of losing her than being poorer, and now after everything, he could still say thank you. She couldn't answer. Her throat was tight, but not from pain. Because she knew no matter what she said, she couldn't say everything she wanted to. "Thank you for loving me," Daniel continued, his voice still steady, but Sophia heard his breathing get heavier. "Thank you for 3 years. Thank you for everything." Silence. Sophia heard him breathing on the other end. She wanted to say thank you too, wanted to say you too, wanted to say I'm sorry, wanted to say I love you. But she just stood there, tears falling, lips pressed together. "Sophia," Daniel said, his voice softer, "take care of yourself." The line went dead. Daniel had hung up. Sophia stood under the lamppost, phone still pressed to her ear, even though no one was on the other end. The wind blew, lifting her hair, and the last tears rolled down her cheeks, salty, hot, and light. Hot. She looked up at the sky. The clouds had drifted away, leaving a clear blue, endless and high. Sophia lowered her hand, put the phone in her pocket. She stood there, in the middle of the street, among people hurrying home after a long day. And she felt something in her chest. Not happiness, not relief, not pain. It was quiet. A quiet after the storm, when the water has receded, when the wind has stopped, when the broken pieces have settled at the bottom. And in that quiet, Sophia knew she'd chosen right. Not because it was easy, not because it didn't hurt, but because it was the truth. And sometimes the truth is the only thing that can make you feel relief. Sophia walked on. Streetlights began turning on, one by one, making long streaks on the sidewalk. She walked slowly, not hurrying, and for the first time in a long time. She wasn't looking ahead or looking back. She just walked. And in her chest, the bricks had been removed, leaving an empty space. But that space wasn't as scary as she'd thought. It was where she would begin again. From the start. With herself. Sophia stood on her apartment balcony, looking at the city at sunrise. The sun hadn't fully risen, just a pale light in the east, painting the high-rises a soft orange. The air was cool, carrying the smell of wet grass and distant car exhaust. She took a deep breath, feeling the air reach the bottom of her lungs, cool, clean, unburdened. 29 years old. 3 years had passed since the day she sat in that cafe and told Daniel she wasn't brave enough. 3 years. Long enough for her hair to grow longer, for small wrinkles to appear at the corners of her eyes. For her heart to heal in a way she hadn't expected. Sophia went back inside, walking through her small apartment. 2 bedrooms, a living room, a small kitchen, big enough to cook what she liked. She'd bought it 2 years ago, after saving enough. The first time she held the keys, standing in the empty room, she'd cried. Not because she was sad, but because she'd never thought she could do this alone. Now the apartment was full. The couch she'd spent 2 months choosing. The painting on the wall from a second-hand shop. The frame a little faded, but the colors still beautiful. And on her desk, next to her computer, a small succulent, a gift from her new boyfriend. Her new boyfriend. Sophia smiled, thinking about him. His name was Michael. They worked at the same company but different departments. They'd met at the coffee machine. He asked if she wanted to get coffee together. She said yes, and that was the start. Michael was different from Daniel. He didn't have the weight of the world on his shoulders. He didn't wake up at 5 in the morning to take care of his mom. He didn't have 2 young siblings to support. He was just a normal guy. Worked 8 hours, came home and cooked, went hiking, or watched movies on weekends. He was light, no heavy load. And Sophia found herself lighter too when she was with him. No calculations, no fear, no sleepless nights adding and subtracting numbers. When Michael asked her about the future, she didn't feel her chest tighten. She felt it open. But sometimes, in quiet moments, when she sat alone on the balcony watching the city lights come on, she still thought about Daniel. Not with regret, with quiet gratitude. Sophia went on a trip alone at the end of the month. She chose a small coastal town, 3 hours from the city. No plans, no schedule. She just wanted to be somewhere where no one knew her, no one needed her, no one was waiting for her. She rented a small room facing the ocean. Every morning, she woke up at sunrise and walked along the shore. The ocean was quiet this time of year. Gentle waves, clear water. She took off her shoes, walking barefoot on the wet sand, feeling each grain under her soles. The sand was cold, but after a few minutes, her feet got used to it, and the cold became a cool, pleasant feeling. She thought about the past 3 years. Her job was better. She'd been promoted twice. Not because she was ambitious, but because when she stopped worrying about other people's futures, she had more energy for herself. She read more books, learned to cook, started doing yoga, something she used to think she didn't have time for. She also learned to be alone, not the lonely kind of alone, but the kind of alone that feels full. She learned to enjoy dinner by herself, to listen to music without needing to share it, to spend a whole Sunday reading on the couch without feeling guilty for doing nothing. And she learned to love Michael, to love in a different way. Not love mixed with fear and calculation, but love with lightness and trust. When Michael said, "I love you," Sophia didn't ask herself, "Do I love him enough?" She just felt, and the feeling was enough. On her last day in the coastal town, Sophia stopped at a small grocery store to buy some things to bring back. It was a small store, not a big chain. Vegetables on the left, meat and fish on the right, and in the middle, low shelves packed with canned goods and pasta. She was holding a box of strawberries, deciding whether to buy them, when she heard a voice, a familiar voice. It wasn't loud, wasn't special, but it hit Sophia's ears like warm water, making her freeze. She didn't turn around right away. She stood still holding the strawberries, feeling her heart start to beat faster. Then she turned. Daniel stood at the vegetable section, 3 rows away from her. He was holding a bunch of celery, looking at it with a thoughtful expression, like he was judging how fresh it was, and he had changed. It took Sophia a few seconds to recognize him. Daniel had filled out, not fat, but filled out in the way someone does when they've had time to eat properly, to sleep enough, to stop running from one thing to another. His face was rounder, fuller, the sharp hollows from 3 years ago gone. His eyes weren't sunken anymore. They were bright, really bright. And beside him, a woman. She wasn't tall, with short hair, wearing a light yellow sweater. She was smiling at Daniel, and Sophia saw Daniel smile back. His smile now wasn't the smile of a man carrying the world on his shoulders. It was light, carefree, the smile of someone who'd found a place to rest. Sophia stood watching. She didn't know what to do. Hide, pretend not to see, walk away, but her feet wouldn't move. And then Daniel looked up. Their eyes met. Sophia saw Daniel's face change. First, surprise. His eyes widened, eyebrows raised. Then surprise gave way to something else. Not awkwardness, not embarrassment, but familiar gentleness. The gentleness Sophia had seen in those eyes for 3 years. He put down the celery, said something to the woman beside him. She turned to look at Sophia, smiled, nodded, then went back to looking at the vegetables. Daniel walked towards Sophia. His steps were slow, unhurried. hands in his pockets, shoulders relaxed. When he got closer, Sophia smelled the familiar smell, soap and coffee, still the same, unchanged. "Sophia," he said. His voice was still low, still warm, but without the tiredness from before. It had a peace to it, a calm she'd never heard. "Daniel," she answered. Her voice was calm too, no shaking, no rushing. They stood there in the small grocery store, among the low shelves and the smell of fresh vegetables. Sophia looked at Daniel, and she saw he was okay, really okay. No longer the man who'd gotten on one knee with shaking hands, no longer the man who'd cried in her arms, no longer the man who'd said he was more scared of losing her than being poor. He was a different man, a man who'd been healed. "You okay?" he asked. A simple question, but it carried 3 years with it. "I'm okay," Sophia said, and she meant it. "You?" Daniel looked back at the woman standing at the vegetable section. She was watching them, smiling, not jealous, not worried, just a gentle smile full of trust. "I'm okay," Daniel said. And Sophia saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Not the light of hope, not the light of effort. It was the light of someone who'd stopped running and had found a place to stand. "That's my wife," Daniel said, his voice light. "We've been married 2 years. Sophia looked at the woman. She was holding a bunch of cilantro, turning it in her hands, still looking their way. A normal woman. Not flashy, but she had something, a warmth, a quiet presence that Sophia thought suited Daniel. "Congratulations," Sophia said. She meant it. Deep down, she didn't feel jealous. She didn't feel regret. She just felt relief that he'd found someone who could be with him, someone who wasn't scared like she was, someone brave enough to love him completely. "Thank you," Daniel said. A moment of silence. Not a heavy silence like the day they sat in the cafe. It was the silence of two people who'd once loved each other, hurt each other, let each other go, and now, standing face to face, saw each other at peace. "I should get back to my wife," Daniel said, smiling. "She's waiting." "Yeah," Sophia nodded. "Goodbye, Daniel." "Goodbye, Sophia." He turned away, walking back to the woman in yellow. She reached out. Daniel took her hand, and they walked together toward the checkout. Sophia watched them go, saw Daniel's shoulders relaxed, saw him lean in to say something to his wife, saw her laugh, saw him laugh. They were happy. Sophia knew it. She could see it in every step he took, no longer rushed, no longer burdened, just the steps of someone walking home. Back in her apartment, Sophia put her shopping bag on the table and went to the bedroom. She opened the bottom drawer of her nightstand, where she kept things she didn't use but couldn't throw away. At the very bottom, she pulled out a photo of her and Daniel from 4 years ago. They were standing under a tree, yellow leaves covering the ground. Daniel was wearing his light blue shirt, his arm around her shoulder, smiling bright. She was leaning into him, her hair longer than now, eyes shining, mouth wide in a smile. That was before she knew fear, before she knew calculation, before she knew numbers and bricks. That was when she only knew how to love. Sophia looked at the photo, her finger tracing the glass. She looked at Daniel in the picture and remembered the man she'd seen at the grocery store. He'd changed. She'd changed too. They weren't the same people in that photo anymore. But that was okay. Sophia set the photo on the table, looking at it under the light. She didn't feel regret. Not because she didn't love Daniel. She had loved him, truly. But some things love can't overcome. And she'd chosen not to try. She'd chosen herself. And that wasn't wrong, it was just the truth. Sophia put the photo back in the drawer and closed it. She stood up, went to the living room, and opened the window. The evening wind came in, cool, carrying the smell of grass and damp earth. She looked out at the city, buildings starting to light up, cars moving along the streets, and she felt her heart at peace. Her phone buzzed, a text from Michael. "Are you back yet? I made pumpkin soup, your favorite." Sophia smiled, typing back, "Just got back, wait for me." She grabbed her keys, walked out the door, down the stairs. In her head, words came quietly. Not from a book, but from what she'd learned in the past 3 years. Some people come to teach you how to love, and some people come to teach you how to love yourself. Sophia stepped outside, took a deep breath. The evening air was cool, clearing her lungs, lightening her heart. She walked toward Michael, toward the present, toward herself. And in her heart, nothing lingered.